We're rolling.
Welcome to the REI Rookies Podcast.
The Real Estate Investing Rookies Podcast, episode number 102, where we invite you to follow us on our journey towards financial freedom using the power of real estate. I'm Josh Koth.
And I'm Jack Haas.
And here at REI Rookies, we believe in a couple key principles. Number one, the best way to retain information is by teaching it to others. And number two, a rising tide lifts all boats. We're not competitors, we're a community. So let's get into some real estate investing.
Well, this week we have an interesting topic, and it was spurred on by Mr. Luke Weber, the author of The Flipping Blueprint, off his Facebook page.
Yeah, I love The Flipping Blueprint. I love Luke Weber. It's a great book. Definitely recommend it. Get it off Amazon. And he posted in his Facebook group a meme and had a picture of a $100 bill. And he was talking about when people care about how much money he made on a flip. He says, if I bought a $100 bill for $30, does that make it worth $30? And his point is, to the end person, if you bring a $100 bill into a store, it's worth $100. It's going to buy you $100 worth of items. Just because if he happened to buy it for $30, that doesn't make it worth any less. So I thought that was a good starting point for a discussion, and this kind of all ties into scarcity versus abundance mindset, and kind of staying in your lane, worrying about yourself, not worrying about what other people are doing, or being jealous of what others are potentially making. So a good discussion point.
Yeah, this is, and I know this is a much more simplistic version of that, but I see you wrote here that it's, and I still hear this today, somebody talking about the cost of pop at a restaurant, and it's maybe 20, 30 cents worth of material, and they're charging you $2, $3, $4 for it.
Yeah, and then they'll say, what a ripoff. The pop in this cup only costs a few cents, and they're charging me $3. What a ripoff. They don't need to make that much. So when you hear those types of phrases, that's really an indication of the scarcity mindset, and also just ignorance of how businesses run. I mean, sure, the actual syrup that made that pop cost a few cents, or the materials and that go into that cup cost a few cents. But what other costs are involved in providing that drink to you? They have to make the machine. They have to set up a supply chain of providing materials and supplies for that soda machine to be full every week. They have to repair it. They have to hire workers to serve the cups. It's not a simple equation of, they charged me $3 for that pop. It was, had 20 cents worth. They made $2.80. There's a lot more costs involved. When you hear phrases like that of people complaining about the alleged profit made, and they're just doing a simple calculation of the price versus the price of the materials, that's really an indication that they don't have too much business knowledge, number one. And, they don't understand that the actual profit margin, the amount of money that the owner of that restaurant is putting in their pocket is probably a pretty small amount off that cup of soda.
Yeah, and we still fall into this trap ourselves. I mean, I'm especially off properties off the MLS. If the numbers work out, we've lost out on opportunities because we feel like we need to get a bigger discount, or we need to that's the starting point.
Right. We're so trained to offer lower offers that even if we see an asking price that works, sometimes you're still so trained that you might miss out on the deal because you offered too low, and you reduce your chances of getting the deal that could have been a nice profit for you when you purchased it. So we're so kind of biased against ever paying asking price too. That definitely factors in. You get trained to just constantly be always offering lower. And sometimes the asking price is perfectly acceptable and would be a good deal. So you have to learn to analyze the deals on their own merits, regardless of what else someone paid for the house previously. Well, I've heard some people talk about, they bought this house a year ago for X amount. Now they're selling it for X amount. They don't need to make that much, or they can sell it for less, or, that kind of stuff factors in. And really, it may contribute to their ability to sell at a discount, but you just have to analyze the deal on its own merits and decide what price works for you.
So in the end, do you really care what someone else is making?
Yeah, that's a tough one because, this comes up in we've seen this from both sides, because we wholesale properties to other investors. Sometimes they know what we paid for the property. Sometimes they don't. It just depends on the timing and how it all works out. And we're usually happy to talk about those matters because, we don't feel the need to defend, whatever we made. Obviously, you should buy for as cheap as you can and sell for as much as you can, right? Sometimes that spread is little. Sometimes it's more. Sometimes it's a standard average right down the middle of the road amount. But let's, talk to a couple examples here and see how, you'd feel about what the other person made. So let's say, as an example, a wholesaler brings you a property and let's say you're a flipper or a landlord. They have the property under contract for $90,000. They sell it to you for $100,000. So, they're making $10,000. Okay. How do you feel about that so far?
I think that's more than acceptable.
Okay. Now, let's say you found out, or they bring you the same deal, $100,000 property. You found out they bought it for $50,000. Now you're going to buy it for $100,000. They're going to make $50,000 versus $10,000. Now, how do you feel?
It makes me sick to my stomach.
Right. Now, it's the same house. It's either worth $100,000 to you or it's not. So why does it matter if they bought it for $90,000 or they bought it for $50,000 or they bought it for $1 and they made $900 or they made $99,099? Should it matter to you, the end purchaser? It really shouldn't, right? But how do you get past that? Because psychologically, I think we all fall victim to this. You find out the other person made $50,000 and you might make $30,000 flipping it, or you might keep it as a rental and make $300 a month or whatever. It's going to take a long time to make $50,000. So you almost begrudge the other person for making that. So how do you counteract that natural instinct?
Boy, it's such a mental hurdle that I completely understand why people get stuck on this. And like I said, to this day, I mean, I still get stuck on it. Mm-hmm.
You see the Zillow price tax history, right? So a lot of times what homeowners paid for their house. And it factors into how good of a deal you think you're getting, when really it shouldn't. I mean, all it should matter is what is the end price to you, and is that a good deal or not?
Right. And some of that information might be useful, especially if you're dealing directly with a residential seller. We buy lists all the time, right? Giving you an idea of the equity position. Mm-hmm. But you are right. I mean, in the end, if it's a deal, it's a deal, no matter what the wholesaler or the seller, what spread they might be receiving.
Right. And another way to view this is, let's say you buy a property from a wholesaler, you fix it up, put it on the retail market, sell it to an owner-occupant. Most owner-occupants, they're just looking for houses, right? They type in the number of bedrooms they want, the neighborhood they want, and a list of houses come up. So they're comparing your house against other houses that are available on the market with similar conditions, similar amenities. They don't know what you paid. They don't know how much money you put into the rehab. None of that factors in. And, they don't have jealousy over someone making a profit because they're just comparing it against other deals that are available to them and making a decision. Does it work for them? Is it where their family wants to, put down roots, whatever? They're analyzing the house on its own merits. So I think that's kind of a good way to view it. And, we can learn a little bit from the end buyer. Sometimes we get too concerned about the other party and always kind of going to war in negotiations, right? Sometimes you just got to settle down and say, okay, I'm used to lowballing all the time, but does this price work? And can we just move forward as it is?
Yeah. So what do you think a person needs to do, like mentally, to help them get through this type of hurdle?
I think it's, a lot of self-talk and just constantly being aware of it. And you have to just make a choice. I'm a believer that you can have a lot more influence over how you react to things and how you feel about things than you probably think. And there's that saying, it's, how you feel is you can't control what happens, but you can control how you react to it. And that a lot of times will determine how you feel about any situation. So you can control how you react. So if you are analyzing a $100,000 property, that's your price, and you find out the person paid $90,000 or the person paid $50,000, you can control your reaction to that. So you just have to take charge of your own brain and say, okay, great, good for them. I think a really good, indicator of someone being in the proper mindset is if you hear about someone doing well or doing a great deal and you genuinely feel good for them and you would high five them and say, awesome, great job. And I like to feel like we're that way. Like when people in our local meetup or people that were in networking groups, get a great deal under contract or they flip a house and they make a bunch of money. We're legitimately happy for them because we want to see everyone succeed. We think it helps out the real estate investing market locally. So I like to think that we're hopefully embracing that mindset and we're genuinely happy for others when they do well. I feel like we are.
Yeah. The way you worded that, it reminded me, I'm sure I got it from Gary Vaynerchuk or one of those mindset gurus, but you can really tell who your real friends are when you spot the people that are rooting you on and actually say good job and they're happy for you and especially even in smaller successes like that.
Yeah, a lot of times it reveals more about the person if they're jealous or unhappy for you. They don't like to see other people succeed because it reflects negatively on them perhaps or their own self-image. So there's a lot of that self-esteem, stuff at play there. Disclaimer, I'm no psychologist.
But you think you are.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about, the soda example. There's a little bit of cost involved in the supplies and a huge markup. What a ripoff, people think, right? Well, how does that apply to real estate? Well, let's say a wholesaler is presenting you with a potential deal you're going to flip or buy as a landlord. You may or may not think it's a good deal, and you may or may not think that they're justified in the amount they're making. One analogy I'd say are similar. We have a lot of similar costs as wholesalers involved, just like the restaurant does in producing that cup of soda. How many leads do we go through before we actually have a deal under contract? I mean, it's a numbers game in real estate especially. And buying at a deep discount as a wholesaler, you're talking to a ton of people. So, how many hours did you spend talking to people, emailing, visiting houses before you got that one deal? That's a lot of man hours. Also marketing, the CRMs and all the direct mail and bandit signs and everything else that goes on. There's a lot of costs involved in finding these deals. So really the amount of profit that someone may think is there is really diminished by the costs involved in acquiring that deal in the first place. And that's something that people don't really think is there. They just think, the deal, they got the deal and they made X amount. Subtract their price from what they paid. But really there's a lot of other costs involved, just like that restaurant and providing that soda.
Yeah, to put things into perspective, and I think a lot of people lose sight of that. For a house that we consider to wholesale, we're probably putting in and looking at over 50 houses in order to get that one opportunity.
Right, and that's a lot of man hours and a lot of marketing dollars spent just in pursuit of every contract. So that's something that all that costs money, right? What do we value our time at as investors? So hopefully quite a few dollars per hour. So there's a lot of money being spent acquiring these houses. So I really try to, having been on both sides of it, analyze the deal on its own merits and feel free to negotiate, obviously. But sometimes, the deal on its face works and it's a good idea to move forward. And we're trying to learn that lesson ourselves and heed our own advice a little bit and take that to heart. And if the deal works, move forward.
Move forward.
Exactly. All right. Let's wrap her up.
So I guess we'll probably wrap this up. If you haven't picked up that Luke Weber book yet, highly recommend it. We've gotten a lot of value out of that book. And it's probably under $20 compared to a lot of other education and information that you can receive, especially in real estate investing. It's well worth the investment.
Definitely. And we've also put a lot of effort in providing useful content into the show. So if you have any interest in supporting us with a small donation, head over to patreon.com/REIRookies. And if you have any thoughts or questions, shoot us an email at info@REIRookies.com. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at REIRookies.
And remember, get off the bench.
And get into the game. We'll see you next time. This episode is brought to you by FargoTurnkey.com. Do you live in a good cash flowing market? If so, Turnkey isn't the best choice for you. You should buy in your market. If you don't live in a great market for investors, where can you find profitable cash flowing properties? We love the Midwest, where prices are reasonable and the people are great. Ever heard of North Dakota Nice or see the movie Fargo? That's where we live. We personally invest here and have lived here all of our lives. How does Turnkey work? We find the property, we rehab the property, we find you a tenant and place you under the care of our local property manager, who we trust with all our own investment properties. I'm sure you have questions about how the process works and what to do next. If that's the case, fill out the form on fargoturnkey.com and we'll reach out to see if you are a good fit for our business. We have a limited supply of properties every month, so we can sell only to a few qualified buyers. See you at fargoturnkey.com.
I don't like to tell a man what to do with his money, but if you ain't investing in property, then you're dumber than a dummy.
I'm not dumb. I'm smart.
Well, buy property. That's my advice.